What's up, Restoration Podcast family? Pastor Scott here. Today I get the opportunity to sit down and talk with Pastor Tyler Mao from Sioux City First about ministry, about youth pastoring, about the highs, the lows, and everything in between. So I hope you enjoy this episode. I don't take my MacBook home. I leave it at work.
We're rolling.
Okay. I don't take my MacBook home. I leave it at work because one thing Kendra and I had a conversation with when we first started here was I was like, I never want to bring work home. And I understand there's times where I have to do work at home, and that's why I also have an iPad that I bought on my own money. But I always leave my MacBook plugged into my computer here so I don't have to worry about, and if I do need it, I'll go to the office and grab it and stuff like that. But I usually just leave my MacBook at work.
I try to do that because for a multitude of reasons. One of them is just I don't know. I think I've got a little bit of OCD with things, and I overthink things that nobody should overthink. But yet again, that's what I do, and so
It's the way of the youth pastor.
it kind of is. But so I try to leave it. I try to leave it at. I do have an iPad also, but I've resorted to that. I just use it at church. I don't use it. Like
Yeah.
I paid for it, but I just don't use it.
Yeah.
I think
I use mine to preach from, and
that's the extent
Yeah.
of what I would use it for, is preaching from. It's really church related things. It's
Yeah.
like I preach from it. We bought a little square reader
Mhm.
for speed the light giving,
Mhm.
and so that's connected to the iPad. That's really what I use it for. It stays in my drawer, and I take it out when I need it. But
Yeah.
the laptop is what I mainly use now for everything. And just because, especially with having the 15-inch, I just don't feel comfortable preaching from that because it's so large.
Yeah.
And especially in our youth building, like having a large screen like that in such a small building is kind of lecture-ish.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what I don't want it to feel like. And so I keep the iPad around for preaching and all that kind of stuff, but I mainly just use the laptop. And I need to do better of not, because my thing is, and what my brain tells me is that I'll need it for something,
Yeah.
and I won't.
Yeah.
And so, like, for example, when we went and visited my parents for Christmas, we were there for like 6 days. I didn't bring my laptop. And
Mhm.
guess what? I didn't need it once.
Yeah.
And so it's just retraining my mind. And it's funny, I read Romans 12, 1-2 this morning about renewing your mind. And it's retraining my mind that, these things are great to have this technology, but guess what? You probably don't actually need it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to be watching every single sporting event that's on. I don't need to be online shopping for 2 hours, things I know I'm not going to buy or don't want. And so, when I can be like reading or something, because that's something this year that I've striving to get back into, is actually read more books instead of waste time doing frivolous things that don't matter.
Yeah. I'm the same way. For me, my MacBook is my work computer. It stays at work. For me, my iPad. First off, my iPad doesn't even have like a lot of storage. So
Do you have a keyboard for the iPad?
I do.
Okay.
I
so
do.
yeah.
So my cool story about my iPad, when I first started here at the church, I was like, I want an iPad to use to preach from, because I was preaching from my laptop, and I'm like, I got this massive MacBook sitting here, and I'm like, I just didn't like the way it looked. And so Pastor Johnny one time, he asked Pastor Aaron, he was like, hey, do you want to buy my iPad? Because he wanted to buy something else. And I was like, and Aaron was like, no, I don't need it. And I was like, I'll buy it.
I
And so
got you. I
bought
got
it.
you.
He gave me a really good deal on it. I ended up spending a lot less money than I would have if I bought
Right.
it new. But I got the iPad, the keyboard, and a pen,
There you go.
and I was set. And then I was just kind of like, I also don't like have streaming services on my iPad. I don't have games on my iPad. I have
Yeah.
one game.
I don't even have games on my phone.
Yeah, I have one game on my iPad, and it's a coloring game, and it's for my kids when they're
Makes sense.
just for them to.
Sure, it's for your kids.
Yeah, sure. We'll go with that.
Okay, you guys have never done a little stress coloring?
Look, my wife has adult coloring books, so
Hey, everybody's got it, bro. Everybody's got their thing. And then my phone is just for leisure. And so I really don't use my iPad all that often, except for when I need to touch up something on the sermon, or if I'm I do have a few ebooks on there that I've been reading. Been trying to get. I have never been a reader. I think
readers are leaders.
That's what I'm saying. And so I think it was probably Pastor Johnny. Pastor Johnny probably was preaching a sermon and he said that, and I was like, I need to start reading more books. And so that's one of my goals this year is to start reading more because I want to. And there's a few books that the Lord's been talking to me about reading, and I'm just like, stuff.
Yeah, I think you have to be very intentional with that. Because for me this year, like it's one of my yearly goals, but I also not only did I set it as a goal, but I set a number of books and I also have like a reading list to be intentional about it.
Oh,
So like my goal is 25 and I have a reading list of all the books that I want to read this year, whether I've never read them before or I've read them and want to read them again.
mhm.
And then I have a little list on the notes app where when I finish it, I can, click it and it moves down. But my wife introduced me to the Goodreads app, which is also another app where you can track your progress
use
of
that.
the books that you're reading and, go through it. And then when you're done, you can finish it and it goes on your shelf, all that kind of stuff. And so I use that to track
That's pretty
as
cool.
well. But yeah, that's really one of the things because and even on my phone now, like I think I have what is it besides for the Apple, apps, I have 6 apps that I have on my home screen that I use. Like
Yeah.
I don't have any sort of sports apps, I don't have any social I don't know. This is just really me and where I've been going the last kind of half year to a year, but I'm kind of just zero dark 30 on socials at this point. Like what I've been learning and what the Lord is teaching me, and that's kind of also from what He's really been teaching me about myself and what my wife has really kind of helped me uncover is I care too much about what people think and
Mhm.
I care too much about making people happy.
Mm.
And what I've realized is nobody cares if I'm on social media. And I'm not trying to say that to sound mean or anything to
Mhm.
myself, but it's true. Nobody cares what I post.
I
Nobody
care.
cares about the story that I share about the Packers winning a game
Did the
or
Packers win on Sunday?
no,
Oh,
didn't.
who'd they lose to?
They lost to the Chicago Bears. Thank you very much. Yes, thanks. Good job, guys. I feel so appreciated here.
Sorry, I just had to slide that in there.
Nobody cares what
Yeah.
I post, and it's just the same thing of not that, and because maybe it's part of it. I'm using social media wrong to try to get likes and all that kind of stuff, which I think is just the major downside of social media. But it's like, and I was talking to one of my students even last night at youth group, and we had a student who we loved. He moved um, to the Des Moines area back in uh, October, November,
Mhm.
and so we miss him. And he posted, something on his Snapchat story, which I'm not on Snapchat anymore either. And he posted something, and it was just, a kind of something that was, heartfelt about our youth group. He found a new youth group, but he was just, shouting us out, saying how much he missed us, all that kind of stuff. And so I didn't see it, but this other student showed it to me, and I'm just like, and she was like, "Did you see this?" I'm like, "No." She's like, "Why?" I'm like, "'Cause I'm not on Snapchat anymore." She's like, "Oh." But it's also, and we kind of started talking about it, but I was just like, nobody cares what I post on social media, and that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
And what am I doing social media for? And look, our youth group social media is kind of at a bare minimum, and we've been seeing incremental numerical growth over the years, and so it's like I get social media has its place in our world,
Mhm.
and that's fine, but for me it's just like it doesn't after I'm on social media, I don't feel better about myself
Yeah.
when I log off.
Yeah.
And I think both of you guys probably can attest to that a little bit and agree. And so it's just like, what's the point? Like I'll do our youth social medias, I'll do our church social medias. That's fine. It's part of my job, but it's also personally, does it really matter?
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of, when I first started working here, I was like, I remember because I left a ministry that was like really thriving and I came here and I was trying to get things going and I was trying to like reestablish stuff. And I just remember there was one Wednesday night after a service I sat down and I told my wife, I was just like, I feel so defeated. And she was like, why? I was like, well, look at what they're doing. And then we're not going
Yep.
to the places I wanted to go. And I was like,
Yep.
what the heck am I doing?
hmm
And that's the thing too. Like I anytime I've ever talked to a youth pastor, there's a youth pastor I knew that he's in a small town in Oklahoma, and I ran into him at a conference, and I was talking to him, and I was like, dude, how many kids do you have these days? And he was like, oh, we run about 7. And I was like, dude, that's awesome. And he's like, what are you talking about? He's like, you have a youth group that's got like 65, 70 kids. And I was like, dude, those are 7 kids that are hearing the gospel
Mhm.
in a
Yeah.
consistent and a good way. I was like, that's awesome. Like, and a lot of people don't know this, but I started out youth pastoring a youth group that had 7 kids that went from 7 kids to 2 kids.
Mhm.
And I literally, for almost a
Yeah.
year, was just leading 2 kids, sometimes no kids. And so
Yeah.
it's like, it's just being faithful with the little that takes you places and stuff like that. But it was just one of those things that I was like, man, why am I comparing myself to something that I'm not even a part of? Because
Right.
what they're doing is not what I'm called to do. I'm called to do what I'm doing. And so for a while, I was off social media, and then I got back on, and I'm still on it, but I really only post because there's a lot of people in Oklahoma that are like, "Oh, what are you
What are you up
doing?
to? Yeah.
How are the kids?" And they want to see pictures of my kids. I probably get a text every week from one of my sisters and my mom, pictures of the kids, and I'm like, "You don't want any pictures of me? You don't want to ask how I'm
Yeah.
doing? You just want pictures of my kid?"
I don't matter anymore. It's
Yep.
just my yeah. It's
Yeah.
just it's just the children that matter.
It's the life I live.
Yeah. I mean, but what? Yeah, but also with because our youth group is anywhere between 20 and 25, and which is awesome. I love it. I love our youth group. But what you're saying, with the youth group 7 versus 70, you feel it so much more when one student leaves in a youth group. We feel it like if it's ours, we feel it when a student leaves more than you might, just because there's so many more. And I'm not saying that's good or bad, but like we had our student Nick who moved, like he started coming back, I think, at the end of 2023 with one of our students, Jonathan, and Nick just fit in seamlessly. He just molded right into the group, and so when we all found out he was moving, we were crushed, and it's been tough not seeing him every week, but
Yeah.
we know he's coming to camp with us in the summer, and
Oh.
so excited about being able to. He came with us to convention. He met us there, and so because he lives now in the Des Moines area, and so.
That's so awesome.
But yeah, it's all about that. But yeah, like going back to the social media, I don't know. I love technology. I think it's great. It's why we can do this podcast, and it's why Aaron's computer is going to blow up today. But
Can you fact check that for us?
yeah,
I'm on it.
nice. But it's just there's good things, there's harmful things, and I think for me, a lot of times, social media was just doing more harm to my mental space, to what I thought about, and it's just like I can live without it.
I think more people need to do that. I think more people need to. That's one thing I appreciate about you is I see that you take like an introspective look at yourself, and you're like, okay, I know my weaknesses and I know my strengths, and I know that this isn't something that's benefit me. It's kind of like, if your eye causes you to sin, gouge it out. Your left hand causes you sin, cut it off and stuff like that. Like, that it's not necessarily causing you to sin, but it's taking you down a road of comparison and stuff like that. And I think that's something I really respect, that you have that ability to look within yourself and see that and be like, okay, this is not who I want to be. This is not who God's called me to be. This isn't benefiting me. And that's the thing that, like, I don't think kids really get is, like, they think, oh, I got to be on social media. All my friends want to see my posts. But, like, at the end of the day, like, you're posting the best part of your life.
Right.
Your real friends are there for you in the worst parts of your life.
Exactly.
And so it's one of those things that's like, yeah, me and my wife, we post pictures of our kids. We're obviously not going to post pictures of our kids laying on the ground throwing a fit. But it's one of those things that's like, that's the real life. Like, our friends, our close friends know that.
Tantrum number 3 in the Veronese household today, #dad life. Yeah, you're not going to, those things don't get posted very often.
Like, my kid trying to transfer, he fell asleep in our bed last night. I tried to transfer him to his bed at 5 in the morning.
He woke up.
He decided he didn't want to be awake. He didn't want to sleep. He woke up, and then he woke his sister up. So it's 5 in the morning, and I have 2 kids screaming, and I'm like, I just want to sleep.
Yeah. Especially after a Wednesday night.
Yes.
Like, oh my goodness. Yeah, those are
That's why I got the biggest drink I could get.
there you go. That's how it works. And when it comes back to the comparison thing also, one of the things that somebody, and I really wish I remember who told it to me. I'll just say Pastor Josh told it to me because there's a chance that he did.
Yeah.
But one of the things that someone told me is with the comparison and especially with the my people pleasingness, which I didn't really realize I was until my adult life.
Mhm.
It really kind of, and my wife really uh, helped me figure that out. So shout out Grace, I love you. You're fantastic. I'm assuming you're gonna watch this because your husband's on it, and if not, then
Don't tell
I'd
me
be
you didn't
really
watch
sad.
it.
Yeah, don't tell me you didn't watch it. But then again, you hear me yap all the time, so maybe you don't want to. But one of the things that someone told me was, don't take criticism from someone you wouldn't ask for advice.
That's good.
And so, like, and what I mean by that is, don't take it personally.
Yeah.
If somebody comes to me with feedback and whatnot, whether it's constructive or whether it's scathing, like, I'll take it into consideration. But if it becomes more something scathing, I try not to take it personally, because I have to understand, is this someone I'm gonna ask advice from?
Mhm.
Like, if it's some random person that comes up to me and I don't have a decent, really great relationship with, I'm probably not gonna ask them for advice.
Yeah.
But if Scott Veronese over here comes and says something like, "Hey, man, I saw this and I think you need to work on it," I'm gonna take that more seriously, because you're someone I'm gonna come to for asking advice, and so
Mhm.
you're a voice that I'd want to hear from.
Yeah.
And if Pastor Josh or Pastor Dan would come to me with something like, "Hey, I've been hearing this, and I think you should be made aware of it," like, I'm gonna take that more seriously. I'm gonna
Yeah.
take that to heart, and I'm gonna take it personally, and I'm gonna, think about it more, rather than if it's somebody who I don't really know very well, or um, don't have a relationship with. I'll take it, but it's like, and so that was something that really was able to kind of help me be able to deal with the criticisms and the feedback, because I mean, in ministry, and producer Aaron would know that a lot of times in ministry, the feedback and the criticism comes fast and hard,
Yep.
and I don't want to say praise, because it's not praise, but the good feedback and the positive feedback you see less and less. It's more the negative feedback, and
I think it was Pastor Johnny that told us this story. He was talking to us about his pastor. I can't remember if it was his pastor in Georgia or the pastor in Texas that he served under, but he was talking to him, and he was like, he asked him what he was preaching on Sunday, and he was like, "Oh, I don't tell people that. I don't tell people that." And they learn the day of. And he was like, "Well, why do you do that?" And he said, "A lot of good people will say a lot of things out of a good heart that'll mess with your mind about your sermon." And I probably quoted that wrong, but it was something along those lines. And I think it is, a lot of people say things with a good heart, trying to, "Hey, maybe you could do this, maybe you could do that," and it's out of a place. And oftentimes, I don't think, and I'm one of those people where, if you're going to speak something into my life, I'm obviously going to seek the Lord about it. And I'm going to ask the Lord, "Lord, was this something for me? Is this something
yeah,
that I need? Or is this something I need to throw away?" But it's one of those things that's like, if you come to me and you're and you're criticizing what I'm doing, not knowing the frame of ministry itself and being in ministry, because I think that's the thing that a lot of good people get wrong, is like, "Oh, you're a pastor, I'm a
you
congregant.
only work Sundays.
Yeah, you only work Sundays, you could use this little piece of advice." And I'm not saying that their pieces of advice are bad or wrong, but it's just like, sometimes they don't understand the frame of, like, what ministry looks like on a day-to-day basis. Like, our ministry, like, people, even me, when I was not in ministry, I looked at youth pastors and I was like, "Oh, they just have fun all the time." Like, they literally just get to mess around, joke around, have fun, don't really do
I
anything.
mean, yes and no.
And then I interned with two youth pastors that were awesome, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, I mean, my old pastor in Oklahoma used to always say, "Ministry is spelt WORK, work."
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people really understand that, and I don't think people come out of it with, well, like I said, with a good heart. Like, they just want to encourage you, they just want to help you, but sometimes it's just like, "Okay, I didn't need to hear that."
Yeah, and because I think it comes from, it's like any job. Like, I don't understand what it takes to be a professional athlete, because I'm not one.
Yeah.
I don't understand what it's like to be, you know, a doctor or a nurse,
Mhm.
because I'm not one. And I don't understand the stresses. And so for me, going into a doctor's office and telling a doctor or a nurse how to do their job is kind of ignorant and
Mhm.
short-sighted.
Mhm.
And it's the same thing in ministry. Like, they, our our people we minister to, they see us, on a Wednesday night or a Sunday morning or at events and all that kind of stuff. But it just comes from a place where you don't fully know what it's like to be in ministry until you're in ministry.
And I think a lot of people are kind of in the place of like, how should I say this? They say stuff and they don't understand the weight that their words carry sometimes.
That it
And so
holds.
there's times like, I mean, in the 3 years that I'm going on my third year, the 2 years that I've been here, there's been times where I'm about to run a leaders meeting, I'm about to do this, and someone comes and says something to me, and it just throws off the whole night.
Oh yeah.
And the whole night feels weird, and I feel like, and I think a lot of times people just need to understand like there's a lot more to being a minister than just going up there preaching. Like the process it takes to get to that place and get in that space of speaking a sermon and portraying the gospel correctly is a lot of pressure. And then people
yeah.
come in and with their sideways talk trying to tell you how to do things and stuff like that. And I'm the kind of person, I always accept constructive criticism, people thinking I'm doing something wrong because I want them to know my heart. But at the same time, it's just like there was one time I remember somebody said something to me before a service, and I went up to my wife and I was like, I just wish these people knew what it takes to
Right.
do what we do so they would know that their words mean a lot more to us than they think.
Mhm.
And so it's just one of those headspaces of like, okay, like I can't listen to anybody. And I remember Pastor Johnny actually told a story where he said his first few years in youth ministry, he said he was dealing with this fear of like people liking him and stuff like that. And he said there's just this one service where,
Relatable.
yeah, he said there was one service where he just was praying and he asked the Lord to take it away, and he did. And he said he never dealt with it since. And that's a real thing. Like you think, I mean, I don't know if anybody else feels this way, but anytime I preach, I'm like, and you look in the crowd and you just see a bunch of kids looking at you like this.
Yeah.
And you're like, are you? And some kids, that's their listening voice. Some kids are just tuning out, but it's just like, or when it's like a really serious conversation moment and you look out and there's like two kids laughing and you're just like,
Yeah.
smite them. I'm just kidding. I wouldn't say that, but someone had to make a funny joke.
Yeah. And yeah, it's all that. But this is one of the many things I love about, because we've brought up our wives multiple times. This is one of the things I love about my wife, when it comes to ministry. Like, she's such a good ministry partner because she's the one, she's my reality check.
Mm-hmm.
And so like someone can say something to me and it can get in my head and I can start to spiral, and then, when I bring it up to her, she's going to, keep me grounded, and she's
Yeah.
going to metaphorically like hit me in the head with a 2x4 and like
I always love your analogies.
and put it into real perspective where I'm spiraling and she's going to just come and like get it all together and be like, and speak the truth and speak the reality over the situation. Because I think, when you're spiraling, it's hard to have a true view of reality and what's going on because you're spiraling.
Yep.
And so, but she's so good at that. And especially, like I said, with the journey that I've gone on, when it's social media, because I haven't been on, we go to summer camp in June, and I haven't really been on social media since before that summer camp season kicked off, especially Instagram. Snapchat's a recent one that I got rid of. But she's just so good at keeping me grounded and, that reality. And she really has been instrumental in, first off, she's truthful with me. She's never going to tell me a lie. And so she was like, whether it was, and it was kind of hard for me to hear, but she was constantly like, dude, you care so much about what these people think. You care so much about what, our students think. You care so much about making everybody happy. And you can't do that.
Yeah.
And she's like, not everyone is always going to be happy. People are going to find things to complain about. And if you try to make everybody happy, when you make one person happy, someone else is going to be upset.
Talking about we were talking about not caring about what people think and the
Yeah, there
opinions
we
of
go.
others. This is kind of like the intro that the Lord gave me that I've been reading at the beginning of all of our sermons that I've been preaching. It's Romans 12:2. It says, "Stop imitating the idols and the opinions of the culture around you, but be inwardly transformed by the Holy Spirit through a total reformation of how you think. This will empower you to discern God's will as you live a beautiful and satisfying and perfect life in His eyes."
Hey, I read that this morning.
And I read that last night. I've been reading it for probably like the last 3 months.
What
to this day.
translation is that?
It's a Passion Translation.
Okay.
A lot of people don't like that translation, but I believe it
Yeah.
conveys the heart of God very well.
Yeah, you told me we won't go into that, but you told me that one story you have about,
Yeah. And so, but
which is crazy, by the way. But like I said, we're not going to get into it.
But reading that last night for the first time, I was like, oh my gosh, obviously we all can't live perfect lives. But what
Naturally.
that scripture is saying is living perfect and satisfying life in God's eyes.
Right.
And so when you were talking about what you were just talking about, I was thinking about it and I realized, a lot of the times we try to live a perfect and satisfying life in other people's eyes.
Oh, yeah.
Have the nice things,
Yeah.
look cool, whatever. But in reality, we're supposed to just be living a life that's going to be satisfying and perfect in God's eyes, doing what He's called us
Right.
to do and being in the lane that we're supposed to be in. And so that's one of the things that I just felt like I should say.
I mean, even as pastors and church leaders, I think we can easily fall into that mindset of living our lives according to what the world says.
Mm-hmm.
You got to have, all the money. You got to have the nice house, the nice car. You got to strive to have power and,
Mm-hmm.
To be secure and all that kind of stuff. And we're not barred from any of that because we're living on this earth and that's difficult. But yeah, and I think that's a lot of what what we've been talking about for these last few minutes. That what I've kind of undergone is like a transformation of the mind of really, because that's where everything starts. Like it's so important to be able to control what you think about, all that kind of stuff. And I think that's really been what I've undergone is a major transformation of the mind, of what I think about, of how I think about myself, how I think about my job, how I think about my life, and how I think about God, and figuring all that kind of stuff out, and being able to fully live a life that is worthy of the calling that God has placed on it. That like the opinions of people don't matter.
Yeah.
Trying to strive and appease people is not how it goes. Like if you look in the scriptures, when you get to the New Testament, it's on full display. Jesus did not live his life to appease people. He stepped on their toes. He offended them all the time. Paul, in his letters to these churches, he didn't write these letters to appease people. He was blunt. He was sometimes forceful with the things that he was saying. But he was speaking in truth, and he was speaking in love and all that kind of stuff. And he wasn't Jesus, Paul. These people weren't writing these books of the Bible, these letters. Then the gospel writers weren't writing these gospels because, we should appease other people. Like, because obviously Jesus didn't do that. Paul didn't do that. But they were showing, what it truly looks like to live a life in the kingdom and as a believer. And yeah, it comes back to not, not being so caught up in what other people think about what the world thinks, about what everybody thinks your life should look like. Maybe even what you think your life should look like.
Yeah.
Because there's been plenty of times where I've gone to the Lord in prayer. I'm like, God, why doesn't my life look a certain way? And I have to kind of repent and say, Lord, I'm sorry. That's not the way I got to look at it. Like, you're the one who's authoring our story. You're the one who's at the controls, and it's just all about trusting Him and having faith in Him and moving forward. Like last night, I always like to start our year for youth group with a worship and prayer heavy night. But at the beginning of service, I started with I called it our youth in preview message, which was it's like a vision message, but I didn't want to use the word vision because
Overused.
Yeah. And so it was a youth in preview where we talked about like the goals we've set for this year, the dreams we want to see the Lord accomplish, our Speed the Light stuff. But then I felt the Holy Spirit over last weekend give me a word for our youth group, and it was embrace the difficult.
Mm.
And how we can tend to, everybody in this life, when difficult things happen, we can tend to play the victim.
Yeah.
We can tend to hide. We can tend to try to live our lives avoiding those difficult situations when, guess what? You can't.
Yeah.
You can't live your life to avoid the bad things happening. Like, these things are going to happen. People are going to leave you. People are going to hurt you. People are going to say things behind your back. They're going to say things about you. Maybe they'll even say it to your face.
Yeah.
Loved ones are going to pass away. Injuries are going to happen. These things are all happen because that's the world that we live on. And what I laid out for the students in that message is, instead of responding like that, how the world responds, with a victim mentality, with hiding, with blaming others, with blaming God, I said, what if instead of doing that, when difficult things happen to us, what if we responded by asking 2 questions? And the 2 questions were, God, what do you want me to learn from this? And how can I grow my trust and faith in you as I walk through this?
2 very important questions.
And those were, and that was what I laid out for them. Like, guys, we're going to go through difficult things. Some of you are even staring down the barrel of something difficult. And those of you watching, you may be watching in the midst of a difficult situation. And, I want to encourage, anyone who hears this, whatever, to be able to do that, when not to default to our typical response, but to slow down, to go to the Lord and say, okay, God, what are you trying to teach me in this? Because he uses those things that we go through as lessons. And
obviously he doesn't force those. He doesn't put those bad things on us, but we learn from them.
No, he doesn't. You're right. God isn't the author of the bad things. These things happen because of the nature of the world that we live in. But he also uses them to grow us, to grow our faith. And one of the things I said at the end of the message is, I'm like, guys, if you're praying for a deeper faith this year, don't be surprised if you get put in positions that cause you to grow your faith deeper. Because it's like, it's so funny that we grow for a deeper faith, and then we get so frustrated and annoyed that we get put in positions where our faith has to grow deeper.
Yeah, it's where it's tested.
And it's like, we expect that, God, I want a deeper faith, so he's just going to give it to me. No, if we want a deeper faith, God's going to give us the positions that will help us grow our faith to become deeper.
Yeah.
And, we got to make sure that we respond in the right way to be able to.
I think one of the things I love that people say is like, oh, Lord, give me patience. And they don't realize that the Lord's not going to give you patience. He's going to give you opportunities to be patient. And I think that's one thing that I just love
that
about
one person that causes you to lose all your patience. Guess what? When you pray for patience, that person's going to show up in your life more and more and more, because it's the Lord giving you the opportunity to become patient, to learn how to become patient. And he's not just going to drop it in your lap and say, oh, yeah, here you go. Here's your patience. No, he's going to give you the opportunity to grow in that. And so,
I think that the word that the Lord gave us for this year, when I was praying and I was seeking, I wasn't even really praying when he told me the word. I was actually listening to K-Love, and the person was like,
positive, encouraging.
Yeah, everybody's got their word of the year, whether it's blah, 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 blah. And then I was like, I just thought in my head, I was like, man, what's our word for this year? And the Lord said character.
That's good.
And so we just started a series yesterday. This is Thursday. Yesterday was Wednesday. We just started a series called Kingdom Character.
Yeah.
And so we're starting, I don't know how long it's going to go, if it's going to go 6 months, a year, but we're starting to build characteristics on the characteristics that we need to live a life that's pleasing in the eyes of God. And I had the moment to tell the students the hard truth of, if you guys are on board with this, then there's going to be things you have to sacrifice.
Yeah.
There's going to be things that you've been doing for a long time that you're going to have to let go. You're going to have to be the same person you are at church that you are at school. Yep. You're going to have to switch that up and not be that. Because I've had a couple of students like, oh, like I clean up my act a couple of days before youth, so when I come to youth, I don't cuss or anything like that.
Not how it works.
And I'm like, I see your heart. I see it. You want to be better. But it's one of those things that I tell the students this all the time. You don't clean up to go take a shower. No, you get in the shower to get clean, and that's one thing with Jesus is you don't clean yourself up to come to Jesus. Jesus is like, I'll take you as you are, but the closer you get to me,
I'm going to clean you up.
The more you don't want to be the old person, and it's because you see there's that sin separates us from God, and you don't want to be separated from God. You don't want to be separated from the living water, the source, And so that's what we're kind of going after this year, and I'm really excited. I think it's going to set some stuff in motion. I just one thing I don't want to say hate. One thing I don't enjoy about ministry is when people come in and it's like, oh, it's just another Wednesday night. It's just another normal service, and I'm like, you'll get out of this what you.
Yeah.
One of my mentors always said this: the measure of your expectation will determine the measure of your encounter with God.
Right.
And so that's one thing that we're going to be talking about through this series is like, hey, we got to set our expectations that when we come in here on Wednesdays, God's going to meet us. And that's one thing I was saying earlier, that I love the space that you have because it's so personal and it's so, like, you guys got a good setup. And I was like, man, if I wasn't blessed to be where I am, I'm like, dude, that's a good setup.
I love it.
It's so personable, and it's, to me, like, I see pictures and I'm like, dude, that looks comfy.
And I don't have to learn how to do crazy stage design. And
Look,
so
man,
it's very simple for us. Yeah.
There was multiple nights I was here till like 10:30 at night doing that.
Sounds.
And I remember yesterday I was wrapping everything up, and one of the ladies that works at the church was down here, and she goes, I think the kids will like it. And I looked at her and I said, if they don't, I hope they keep their mouth shut.
Yeah. Yeah, because this is what it looks like.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back to what you were saying about the expectation, and that's what one of the things I love about what, and one of the things that our next gen directors, Ryan and Megan Yates, shout out you guys.
Goats.
He always says is, sorry, a little late, but we got it.
It was worth it.
And it's actually on the back of my shirt. I'm not going to turn around so you can see, but it says we get to do this.
Yes.
It's not we have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
We get to do this. And that's one of the things I try to tell my students, like, okay, some of you, maybe you have to come to youth group because your parents are like, we're going to church, or you're going to church and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, you get to come here.
Mm-hmm.
You get to spend an hour away from school, away from work, away from homework, all that kind of stuff. You get to be here. And if you have that mindset that you get to be here, you're going to enjoy it so much more. And, I get to encounter God. I get to hear his word. I get to worship him. And in those moments when you do that, it's going to transform, your experience, like you said, so much more, because you're expecting to meet with the Lord, and you're not there to just talk with friends, go through the motions, and then go home right after. And it changes everything dramatically.
I think that's a big one. You said, you kind of ran over this, but like the fact that we get to worship. Like, I think oftentimes we look at it as like, oh, this is just something we do, but like that's like a pivotal moment in your life, getting to have those moments. And I think too, one of the things that I overlooked when I was a teenager and stuff like that is like, I let that be a moment that was just at church. I never let that be a moment where it was like, oh, I can do this in my bedroom. And
it's a
like,
lifestyle thing.
Yeah, it's definitely a lifestyle change. And so it's one of those things that, like, when I look at it, I'm like, man, I tell my students all the time, I was like, I wish I would have, because I knew I was going to be in ministry since I was like 8 years old. That's when I first heard God tell me youth ministry. That was the first time someone laid hands on me, and that I heard the voice of the Lord. And I knew I was going to be in youth ministry, went with it and stuff like that. But it's like, I never really started preparing myself for youth ministry till I was like 18, 19 years old, 19 probably. And so it was like, I'm like, man, how much further would I have been if and even for the students that I was just talking to a young girl last night, and I was like, what are you going to do with your life? And she was like, well, I want to go get a business degree. I want to get a major in business and a minor in psychology. And I was like, man, you're smart. And then she was like, and then I want to go be a lawyer. And I was like, okay. And I was like, wow. And I was like, it's cool that, because, when we're in ministry, you're like, oh, what kids want to be in ministry? But I'm like, you see those kids that want to be in like the workforce and do stuff like that. It's like, be a light right where you're at.
Right.
Do that. Like, be the best lawyer that God has out there,
Yeah, I know there's going to be students in our youth ministry who go on to be in ministry, but I want to be able to be a pastor and a leader who equips all of our students going into whatever walk of life that they're going into to be able to continue to have their faith outside of once they graduate high school. And, that's kind of just the drive, the heart behind, the philosophy of ministry that we have is, obviously we have fun. We enjoy being at youth group, and we'll do games. We will plan events that, has nothing to do with the spiritual side of things, because we just like to hang out and have fun together. Our groups are going to Cone Park together.
Yeah.
If you're not from Sioux City watching this, Cone Park is a massive sledding hill that we have here.
Down.
Well, you might get in trouble for that. And so But like the main thing, the main goal of of Wednesday nights for us is to worship, to pray, and to get in the Word,
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff. And that's just the focus. Not It's an actual youth group, not like
Yeah.
a hangout or a babysitter's club.
I've had a lot
We
of kids come to me in the past at the youth group I was at in Oklahoma, and some here too, where they come and they're like, I really like going here. And like we have a couple kids from out of like a town hour away that come on Wednesdays, and they're like, the youth group that meets in our town, they're like, it's cool and all, but like all they want to do is like do games and stuff like that. And
right.
I'm like, and I kind of failed at this in my first year in ministry. Was like I looked so much to the spiritual that I wasn't trying to do a lot of stuff in the
There
natural.
has
Like,
to be a balance.
yeah, and so I failed at like events my first year, and so I've gotten better, worked on it and stuff like that. But I was like, the spiritual, building a relationship with Jesus, that's what important. We can go shoot hoops, we can go play nine square, we can play carpet ball, whatever. But like when we go into that service room, that's why we're here. We're here to worship Jesus. We're here to learn about Jesus and get closer to Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's kind of what you said earlier, kind of segues into this question. When did you feel the call to ministry, and what did that look like for you?
I was my senior year of high school. I had no idea what I wanted to do all throughout. I had interests, but I never really had a concrete thing of like, oh, excuse me, I want to do this, I want to do that. I had no idea. But it started, which I didn't know it started then, but it started with a message from my former youth pastor on a Wednesday night, and he told his story, and the message was all about not running from the call of God. I think you can see where this is going.
Yeah.
And he told the story about how he had this plan for his life. He was going to work for his the family business. He was going to make a lot of money. He was going to have a fantastic life. He was going to do all this kind of stuff. But the Lord was calling him into ministry. And he's like, God, I know I'm not going to make as much money as I am in the business. And he kept running from it. He kept running from it. And the Lord kept chasing him, kept pursuing him. And finally he had said yes. And so I preached that message. Lo and behold, a few days later, my father, we were driving somewhere. I don't know exactly where we were driving to, but he asked me, so what are you going to do with your life? He asked me the big question because I was a senior.
Yeah, at that age, that's the big question.
Yeah, I was a senior and I didn't know what I was going to do. And in the moment he said that, the very moment the question ended was the first time that I heard the audible voice of God speak to me. And he said, you're going to be a youth pastor and you're going to go study at North Central University, which is the Assemblies of God University.
Ooh.
And I did go to, okay, all right, Mr. Evangel over there. And so that's exactly what I did, which I could have gone to any other, avenues of education to become a youth pastor. But what I have come to find out afterwards, and what I fully believe, is the first part of it was my call to ministry, and that second part was because that's where I was going to meet my wife, which is exactly where
a good thing.
Which is exactly where we met. We met at the end of our freshman year at North Central, and dated for 2 years, engaged for 1, married the week after we graduated.
Nice.
And so, and in that moment, it was really cool because that message he preached, because in the moment, I thought back to that message that he preached. I don't remember a lot of messages he preached, which is kind of funny now that I'm a youth pastor, because I know a lot of students don't remember the messages we preach, but that's
Yep.
okay. I'm going to be faithful no matter what.
Amen.
But that was one of the messages I did remember him preaching because it was linked to such a pivotal moment in my life where the Lord spoke to me, the Lord called me, and he was preparing me correctly that... Okay, you heard a story of what happens when somebody runs from their call. Are you going to run from it, or are you going to do what Pastor Kirk Gerber, shout out PK, are you going to do what he did and run, or are you going to, upon first time, are you just going to take up the call that I've given you? And, and it was when I said, because then after that moment, I said, Dad, I think God just called me to be a youth pastor. He's like, "What are you talking about?"
No, like right now, he just said it.
I'm like, I just heard. I'm just like, I just heard God speak to me, and He said I'm going to be a youth pastor, and I'm going to go to North Central, and so then that's ended up where I went, met my wife Grace there, and now 4.5 years later in Sioux City, 5.5 years in total, here we are. And it's funny, I look back on it and I laugh sometimes because it just confirms to me that God creates us in such a unique way because, like, when I think about it, there's nothing I would rather do, nor is there anything that I would be good at doing outside of ministry. And it's just really, it's just really funny for me because, like, God knew what He was doing when He created me, and He knew what He was doing when He called me into ministry. And
it's like He knows.
It's
everything.
like He knows the people He created. It's crazy. And so, but so that was kind of the beginning of it. I never wanted to be a youth pastor. But here we are. I never wanted to live in Iowa. I'll say that much.
Me neither.
And so my wife didn't either.
Same.
I'm from Wisconsin, born in Madison, raised in Green Bay. And she was born in Mankato, Minnesota, so southern Minnesota. And those Minnesotans have a very strong prejudice against Iowa. I don't know where it came from, but it's there. And we both never imagined being in Iowa. I always wanted to, again, I wanted to be in Minnesota or Wisconsin.
Yep.
But the Lord had other plans, and He's just shown Himself to be so faithful to us as we've been faithful to Him.
Amen.
And it's awesome. It's been awesome. And, but it also harkens back to, the story of the Israelites in the Old Testament. Like, God has proved to be so faithful to them, and they constantly forget.
Yeah.
And they constantly look at their situations, their circumstances, and forget about the faithfulness of God. And I can be guilty of that sometimes too. Like, God, things don't work out right. And I can sometimes be short-sighted and say, God, why is this going on? What's happening? Where are you? When I've got, just talking about our adult life, 5.5 years of faithfulness from Him. And it's like, dude, just stop doubting and just trust Him. And so that's what, really just trying to do. But that's how it happened. Wasn't on my radar, but when the Lord tells you to do something, I've learned that you do it.
Yeah. Yeah. When me and my wife first got married, we got married in Iowa at my wife's parents used to own a coffee shop, and they had this cool venue. So we got married there. And I remember at our wedding, there was a couple, like a lot of our friends from Oklahoma came up for our wedding. And I just remember one of them was like, so what are you guys going to do after you get married? Are you guys going to move here? And I remember looking him in the face and saying these exact words, I will never live in Iowa. And then fast forward to we get pregnant. We're planning on having our son, and we're sitting there, and we're in a service where it just kind of focused on prayer, and I was just praying. And this entire time, Kendra's like, I know we're moving to Iowa. I know we're moving to Iowa. And I said, babe, I trust that you hear the Lord, but I need Him to say it to me so that can sustain me when we go. And I just remember our church used to be called Morningside Assembly of God. I remember I was just praying, and I just heard the Lord say, I want you to go and be an answer to prayer to Morningside Assembly of God. And I was like, okay. And so, the rest is history.
Yeah, I really I believe fully our God has a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And he likes to laugh, and He likes to make us laugh with things that happen. And
I never want to live in Colorado.
Well, we don't have to get into what's going on in Denver, but yeah, and it was so cool because we came. So the process for coming to Iowa started in 2020. We all remember that year.
Some of us like to forget that year.
Some of us, there was a lot of things that happened for us in 2020, and there was a lot of difficult things we walked through, but in all honesty, I wouldn't trade it for the world, because a lot of things that the Lord taught me, the Lord had to speak to me through what happened, made me become and have longevity in ministry today.
Yeah.
But we were at a church for a year in southeastern Minnesota, and then we left in June of 2020, and so then we had a few months or so. I began reaching out, and my pastor Josh Potter at Sioux City First, where I'm a pastor, and I was trying to figure things out, and I had sent emails to like the DYDs, and this was when the previous DYD was in, and I had a conversation with him, and he's like, I got a church that's looking, and I'll send you their information. And so I reached out to Pastor Josh, and it was really cool because I'd never talked to this dude before in my life, and our first phone conversation was 2.5 hours long.
Wow.
Talk about me being a yapper. Yeah.
Never. Never. That's not you at all.
And then we had another conversation that was an hour and a half. We had a Zoom with him and me and my wife, and that was like an hour and a half long. And then they brought us out to visit in August of 2020, the first weekend of August in 2020. And we were here. We visited the church, showed us around. They took us to dinner. They had I kind of think this is crazy, but I also kind of think this is crazy smart from him. Is they had planned a youth group event while we were there. And so they had us come to the youth group event. It was like a pool party and whatnot that they were having at
that's pretty cool.
Their house. And so it was super intimidating. I was super nervous, but it was cool because we got to build, relationships. And it's where I first met a lot of the students, and one of them in particular who is now one of my leaders. And so that's just really cool. But then
oh, man.
Shout out, Tim.
I look back at when I first started, and my first time interacting with the students, Pastor Johnny had me preach.
That's crazy, too.
And then afterwards do a Q&A. And I was like up there like, I just remember vividly, one person in the back was like, do you have any musical talents? And I literally went to the mic and went,
yeah.
Nope.
This room was jam-packed that night.
Yeah.
It was all the students, some parents, board members, and I was like, no pressure, Scott.
Yeah, there's no pressure whatsoever right there. Yeah, we had our first night, but this actually we were hired. Our first night was like a Q&A, yeah, but it was we rolled up to the Potter's house, and all the students were in the backyard.
Potter's house, I like
Potter's house. And and yeah, but then, we came in on a Friday, we left on a Monday, and that Monday before we left is when, Pastor Josh offered us the job. And it was literally the moment we left the city limits of Sioux City, when we passed the Sioux City sign leaving. And my wife's like, I don't want to go home. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, because we're not going back home. This is home. Talking about Sioux City.
Dang.
And I'm like, and for me, I knew it was one of those moments, like you said with your wife, it was one of those moments where I knew we were supposed to move here. I wanted her to say something.
Yeah.
And so when she said that, I knew that then this is where we're supposed to be. And so then, the next day I accepted the job. Then the following day she got a job. And so within a week and a half of going back home after this visit, we moved here.
That's awesome.
And so it happened super fast, but it was all the Lord doing just incredible things, working through that process. And yeah, we've been here 4.5 years, and
jeez,
it's been fantastic. And I love Iowa now.
Oh yeah.
And I've been transplanted into a Hawkeye fan.
Oh,
which my brother, being a Wisconsin Badger fan, still has animosity towards me against that, because he's like, why are you a Hawkeye fan? You're from Wisconsin. You should be a Badger fan. And I always have to remind him, I didn't root for the Badgers when I lived there. So what do you expect?
Yeah, I cheer for Iowa anytime they're playing, but I'm always an Oklahoma State Cowboys fan. Always will be.
Better than the Sooners, I think.
Yeah, Sooners fans, if you're listening, I know that Jesus loves you, but sometimes you frustrate me.
Yeah. Well, same thing with Bears fans.
Hey, whoa.
I'm sorry, you guys have to live through enough pain and suffering every single year, so.
Hey, we've had to live through a rebuild. Okay? We're getting somewhere. But so one question I always love to ask youth pastors, and I've asked them since I was actually in high school because I knew I was going to be youth pastor. I always like to ask, what's your favorite and what's your least favorite part about ministry, youth ministry?
Oh man. I mean, my favorite part is just doing life with people.
Yeah.
Just being able to hang out with these students, to be able to direct them in the way. Like, one of my favorite things is when a student finally gets it.
Oh, dude.
When they finally understand, whether like when they give their life to the Lord, or when they have that moment, like, Pastor Tyler, this is for real.
Yeah.
I'm in.
That's the best.
I'm all in. I'm on this thing, and just being able to walk with them and show them what it looks like to be, a Christ follower, to show them what it looks like to trust the Lord in every situation, all that kind of stuff, and to be that example, and to just share life with them, to share funny stories, to laugh, to cry, to do everything in between with them.
That's what it's all about.
To go to their games, their concerts, their events, all that kind of stuff. It's all so much fun. It's all, and it can be tiring because you're dealing with people, obviously, and so that brings a whole added element to it. But I love all of it. All that kind of stuff. To be able to have students who want to come up to me on Wednesday and say, "Hey, Pastor, I guess what happened this week," or "Guess what happened," or them shoot me a text like, "Hey, I got an A on this test. I'm so excited," and just those little things for them to be able to share their wins, small and big, with me, to just be a part of their life, to be a part of these students' lives, and have that kind of impact. Because one of the things that, when I first got called into ministry, my former youth pastor had such a huge influence on me.
Yeah.
He is the reason everything changed. Like, and I've told this story to my youth group. I don't know if I've told him the story, but if he happens to watch this back, he's going to hear it now. But I didn't go to youth group. My sophomore year of high school is when the church I attended hired him and his wife.
Mm-hmm.
And I shout out my mom for this too, because we hadn't really gone to youth group. I struggled with a bunch of social anxiety, and she's like, "All right, guys," to me and my brother. She's like, "All right, guys, tonight they're introducing the new youth pastor and his wife. They did a Q&A kind of thing for the first time," and she's like, "We're gonna go," but she's like, "If you guys don't connect with him, if you don't like him, I will never make you go again." And she's like, "But you're going to go tonight, and we're going to see what happens." So I'm like, "Okay, fine. That's great, Mom. We can do that. I'm not going to like it." That's what I decided in my head. I'm like, I'm not going to like it. Nothing's going to happen. I'm not going to like this guy. I stayed after 45 minutes talking to him.
Yeah.
And that flipped everything. And he was such a huge impact on who I am, on all that kind of stuff. And so, but one of the things that I wanted to, one of my big things coming into ministry is I want to have the impact on students that he had on me.
Yeah.
Because it was a life-changing impact.
Yeah.
And that was one of the biggest things that I wanted to have, was to be able to have that impact on students that altered the course of their life.
Yeah.
And obviously it's not me impact, it's the Lord working through me to impact them, but that was because it was the Lord working through him to impact me. Some of the things I remember, like, I loved being able to joke around with him. Like, he was super, sarcastic in a good way, like I am. And so we could just go back and forth with jives and all that kind of stuff. And it was so much fun. But, one of the memories that sticks out to me was, I asked him to come to one of my soccer games, and he showed up.
Yeah.
And those are the things that, as youth pastors, we may not think, we're taking time out of our schedule. We may not understand how much of an impact it plays, but it really does. And so, so those are just some of the things that I love. And I don't know if I have a least favorite, maybe just because it can be so exhausting sometimes. And it's all rewarding, but sometimes you just wake up and it's just, you're tired.
Yeah.
It's been a busy week, all that kind of stuff, and it's draining. And I think the mental fatigue, the mental and emotional fatigue can really play a part. And I think that might be the least favorite, but because then I can get stuck in a rut, and it can make me like my job less. even though I have the greatest job in the world.
Yeah.
And so I think that and just but being able to work through it always, and relying on the Lord, He always helps me work through it. But I think that can be the least favorite part of it. But
I think
there's
mine is
not really a lot of things about my job that I don't like.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing in youth ministry that I've ever encountered is like the old saying of you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. It's like we give these students what we feel like the Spirit of God is saying, and preach these sermons that are great and stuff like that. And oftentimes, you said this earlier, like you only remembered like one sermon your youth pastor preached, and it's oftentimes that kids don't really remember what we say, but they remember how we made them feel.
Absolutely.
And so they equate that to their relationship with God. But I think the hardest thing is to like let kids go, kids that are like you've poured into them. But I mean, you obviously continue praying for them. You continue contacting them.
If they go, they go. If they find another youth group, whatever that works for them, great. You're going to youth group, and that's all that kind of stuff. But yeah, and that brings back to students don't, and it's one of the things that I've kind of learned too. Students aren't going to remember a lot of times what you say, but they remember when you show up.
Yeah.
And because I remember those things. I remember when my youth pastor showed up, to my soccer game.
Yeah.
I remember when my friends showed up to my soccer games and all those kind of things. People, a lot of times, and maybe if it's a great message that spoke to them, they'll remember it. But they remember the times that you showed up.
Yeah.
When they're warming up for their games and, they see you walk in. Like, hey, he's here. I invited him. And he showed up. That's awesome. And so they remember the moments, you show up. And, because for a lot of things for youth ministry is students aren't really going to care about what you say, what you know, until they know you care about them.
Yeah.
Because they want to be known, they want to be seen, and they want to be loved. Mm-hmm. And just like anybody on this earth does. And that's, when you start ministry with that foundation of seeing, knowing, and loving the people that you're ministering to and showing up for them, like you're off to a great start.
Yeah. The way I always like to say it is you gotta connect with a student before you correct a student.
Absolutely.
So you can't, until you make that connection, they're never going to want to hear about the things that they need to fix in their life, mm-hmm. or the way that the things that they should do for their relationship with Jesus or getting closer to Jesus. They don't know you. They don't care what you say until they know you care about them.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's with anybody on this planet is, I wouldn't like somebody. I would struggle with having somebody come and correcting me when I don't know anything about you. You're not in my life. You don't have a relationship. And it comes back to what we talked about a little earlier. But why would I take heed? Why would I take advice from somebody who I don't know?
Yeah,
and
it's very true.
But yeah, hey, let's get. I think he's still listening. Let's get producer Aaron in here. Answer that question for us? What's your favorite and least favorite thing about ministry?
Oh man, I'm on the spot now.
Yeah. I don't know if any guests ever got you involved a lot, but I'm doing that.
Oh yeah, it works. Involved. I'm here. So I want to say probably my favorite part is, like, I don't know how to put this into words, but like my favorite part is that it doesn't feel like work. Does that make sense?
That's fair. Because
I love what I do.
Yeah, I mean, it's the age-old adage: if you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life.
Yeah.
And as cliche as it can sound for me in ministry, and clearly for you, and I think for Scott as well, like that's true. Like we don't feel. I call it. I'm going to work, but it's not work that 9 to 5. Like I have to.
I don't think I've been in this job and ever sat down and thought to myself like, I hate this job.
No, and to be honest and to transparent, sometimes I do take work home, and that's something I need to work on.
Yeah,
but when I do it, I enjoy it. You know what I mean?
I mean, I've never sat down and said I hate this job. I've sat down plenty of times and said, "Dude, you suck at this job."
Yeah, same.
But then I have to work through with the Lord and my wife, and she's like, "No, Tyler, you don't suck at this job. You're good at your job. You're doing what the Lord has called you to do.
Yeah.
You just had a bad day. That's all." And then I work through it, and I enjoy my life once again.
I think the worst Wednesday I ever had was there was a Wednesday I had this sermon that I felt like was going to be really good. And then I got up there, and half my notes didn't go from my MacBook to my iPad.
That's brutal.
And so I was like...
there's no worse feeling. There's no lonelier feeling in ministry than bombing a message.
Yeah.
You're bombing a worship set. Yeah.
I don't know what that's like because I can't sing, but...
Yeah, if I stepped up and led a worship set, it would be a bomb from the beginning because I cannot sing.
Yeah,
And
I second that.
my students, it's so funny. It's a running joke in our youth group because I love to worship, and I set the worship culture in our youth group.
As you should.
But I am a terrible singer.
That's okay.
And like we're in a, like Scott mentioned, we're in a small youth building that we converted from a garage, so it's very small. But I'm belting it out so everybody can hear me. And I am off tune. I sound terrible, but it's not going to stop me from worshiping because I love to worship.
Dude, yeah. That's as it should be. You should set the tone.
What's your
So-
least favorite, Aaron?
I don't like that question to start out, by the way. That's not a good question. But
All right.
I would
guess
say
I shouldn't have
let
brought
me-
him in.
I'll reword your question. How about that?
Sure.
The most challenging part
Okay,
of
that's
this
better.
job is and it's a little different because I don't really work with students. Well, actually, it's not different because they go through things too. But probably the most challenging part of this job is dealing with people, and let me explain that. The people we deal with are human, so they're not perfect people.
Yeah, we love them, but
Exactly.
they can be difficult
I
sometimes.
love them, but sometimes it can be difficult managing people. But then at the end of the day, I have to remind myself, I myself am not perfect either.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm not if I wanted nothing but perfect people on our platform, the platform would be empty.
Exactly.
I wouldn't be up there either. But that is the most challenging part, is dealing with that. I was a teacher before this, so I did used to work with students, but in a different setting. And I had mentioned that on our very first episode, one of our first episodes, was the thing that I found the most different with this job was I came from being the oldest person in the room, the oldest and wisest, to having to manage and oversee and lead people that are like older than me, and it was
Right.
kind of awkward, but that's probably the most challenging.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
Have I been in Iowa the longest?
I was actually going to just point that out, that
Out of us?
you and I kind of overlapped a little bit because I got here in summer of 21.
Okay.
You got here in 20.
20 August of
Yeah, so-
August of 2020.
Yeah, we kind
First
of
day at the church officially was August 24th.
Yeah.
2020.
So yes, you've been here
Dang.
the longest.
That's crazy.
You're the wisest in the room. Right?
I'm the
The most
That's
experienced.
dangerous. That's dangerous. That is exciting though.
Yeah, we both came from places where when it snowed, everybody lost their minds. And so you probably have a lot more snow driving experience.
Yeah, I still don't like it, but
Yeah.
it's and some people still don't know. But I'm gonna go back to what we just because I think it's kind of cool, and I think obviously our listeners have figured out we work at different churches.
Yeah.
But I think there's something really cool about having, different staff members at different churches like coming in at kind of the same time and then being able to grow together.
Yeah.
I agree.
Like it's the same thing that we've talked about in our staff meetings is like, Pastor Josh is coming up on 10 years at the church.
Wow.
Our new connections pastor, Jason, he's been there with Josh and Melissa since the beginning, but he just came on staff within like the last year or two. And Pastor Tony, a worship pastor, has been there. Gosh, how long has he been there? I think 9 years or something. And so now I've been there 4.5. And so now there's continuity in our staff. And I think because of we've had this continuity in staff and there's not a lot of turnover and we've been there and we know each other and we're kind of working towards the same goal together, we're starting to see a lot of that happen in our church through like numerical growth, through people getting involved, through all that kind of stuff. And I think it's also kind of cool here in our, our network or in our area with our two churches is like, I'm here 4.5 years. You've been here like 3.5, something like that. And then, Pastor.
Last September was 2 years.
Oh, dang, it's been, okay. I thought you'd been here longer. But
Yeah,
that's right.
I have actually gotten that a lot.
And then, Pastor Aaron, producer extraordinaire, has been here. And so, being able to grow together, not only with, in ministry, but like,
I guess I'll do the introduction now. If you guys don't know, this is Tyler Mao. Him and I are both youth pastors in Sioux City, Iowa. We're
Sir.
with the Assemblies of God, as we both are wearing
wore this
proudly.
on purpose.
I did too.
Was that planned?
Nice.
That wasn't planned.
I didn't text him, but I wore this on purpose.
Part of me was worried. I didn't know if Scott owned the same shirt.
Same one.
I don't.
And there was
I almost wore an AG shirt too.
and there was part of me that's like, am I gonna show up and Scott and I are wearing the same shirt?
Dude, that would have been awesome.
But we didn't.
Yeah, I don't think
So-
when that one first came out, I was like, I'm okay. And so I think I got this at a live conference. No, fall
I
convention.
do like that shirt. I have an AG basketball. I have a green AG basketball hoodie, but I do like this shirt. I really liked it.
They have cool merch,
Yeah, merch is
especially the
awesome.
long sleeve stuff that you can wear
Yeah,
Iowa.
If our DYD watches this,
yeah.
our DYD is the
Keep
only
it
man
up.
that I know
Commission.
that always designs long sleeve shirts and always rolls his sleeves up. So he has all these long sleeve shirts, and every time you see him, his sleeves are up here.
Well, he also came from Florida, so
Yeah.
I mean,
I was gonna
brother
ask
brother
you.
posts on Facebook about the snow all the time.
Oh yeah, I was gonna ask you, Pastor Scott, and then I'll go away back to my producer spot. But
Oh, dude, we
You-
want you involved.
you
At least
were in-
I do.
so you were not an AG
Nope.
person, and then you came into it. Do you see the like benefits of like the network and how you can link arms with like pastors like Pastor Tyler?
I think that's like probably my favorite part.
Yeah.
I asked him what his favorite part about ministry was, and he was talking about making connections. My thing was, I love the fact that I've been able to make a lot of connections with students, but because of the fellowship we're in, I've been able to make a lot of
Yeah.
connections with youth pastors and students from other ministries.
It's really unique.
And so it's like it's amazing because like you go to summer camp. Usually every summer camp I go a week with my students and then I serve a week as a
Same.
rec staff. And Tyler does the same thing. And usually we try to switch. So one week he's rec staff when I'm there, and then the next week I'm rec staff when he's there. So we still get to hang out. But it's cool because you get to go to all these events and you get to see kids like the process of growth in their life, and they're not even your students. And then you get youth pastors like you got Zach Hill, Luke, you got Donnie, just like great youth pastors that are just fun to be around. And so, and just inspiration, and, been here a long time. And one thing that I've always been about is longevity. And so we have a lot of youth pastors that have a lot of longevity. And so I just love the fellowship and the connection and getting to fellowship and talk to guys and get to grow, because obviously I haven't been in Iowa all that long. And so they kind of help me out and mentor me a little bit. And then Tyler and I usually get coffee every so often just to talk about life and grow a relationship. And so it's just one of those things that it's like, I'm a big relationship person. I always have been. I'm an extrovert. Yeah, I'm an extrovert. So I get fueled up by hanging out with people and talking. And I think that's a gift for ministry, because if I wasn't the opposite, I'd be like, yeah, I'm just going to hang out at home. But, it's just amazing. I've came from a church that has its own network as well. And I think that network is important, getting to know people, getting to grow with people. And so, yeah, I love the AG.
Well, yeah, I think if you don't like building relationships, and you're trying to get into ministry,
You probably shouldn't.
you probably shouldn't. Yeah.
Or you should probably try to grow in that
Or
area.
you should try to figure it out, because if you're, and that was one of the things, because and actually Pastor Aaron didn't know this, so that's okay. But I was actually in a non-denom church for a year before coming back to the AG.
Yeah, you had mentioned your story very briefly the first time we met.
Yeah, I grew up AG, went to the same AG church, went to an AG university, so I'm AG through and through. But my first job was at a non-denom church, but I completely forgot what I was saying. I don't know how this happened, but I completely forgot
I grew up in a non-denom as well.
what I was, and so I went to this non-denom. I'm gonna just try to find that train of thought. It was crazy, that I completely just.
I'll say this. I went to a non-denominational church that had a lot of AG roots.
Sure.
So our head pastor,
Call it AG-ish.
AG-ish.
so he served at an AG church. His father-in-law was an AG pastor in Texas. And so like a lot of, and like the school that's attached to the church I went to, they're in Sioux, is that not what they're called anymore?
Nelson University.
Nelson? Nelson University. They have Nelson University like campus.
Satellite campus.
Yeah, kind of thing at the church and stuff like that. And so we have some AG roots, but a lot of the stuff, it's a private Bible college, so a lot of it doesn't like transfer over.
I remember.
We're back.
Yes, we're back. So, I was. It was just like being in a non-denom church and all that kind of stuff. I literally lost it again. I don't understand how this keeps happening. Yeah, you could. This is crazy. I'm gonna get. Man, if our students watch, I'm gonna get roasted so hard for this.
I'm gonna tag all your students when I post
because
this.
I literally I had it, then I lost it. I literally had it again, and now it just disappeared.
Maybe the Lord doesn't want you to say
I was
that.
about to say the same thing.
Maybe I should just go off it. Oh no, what I was saying. Here we go.
Don't lose it.
No, I'm not gonna lose it. One of the thing that I really really struggled with at our first in my first ministry position, what was the relationship building. I had put priority on messages, which that's good. I need
Yeah.
to, but like message graphics and all that kind of stuff, making sure all that stuff is good. And I put relationships on the back burner. And, I think that was one of the things that the Lord needed to teach me and show me and correct me before he moved me on to our next position was, hey, buddy, like, if you want to be in this, if you want longevity, if you want to stay in this, you got to get better at that.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the things that I came in. I'm like, okay, I need to make sure I'm connecting with these students. I need to make sure that I'm with them. I'm there. I'm speaking to them every Wednesday night. I'm not hiding off in a corner.
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff. I'm with them. And so that was one of the biggest shifts I needed to make coming into this position here in Iowa. Iowa, and so yeah. Back to it. Yeah, if you're thinking about being in ministry and you're not proficient in relationship building, you're gonna have to work on that because it's so. Ministry is relationship building. That's what it is. You
People
can't
are
get
our
around
business.
it. Even the people behind the scenes, there's still relationships that have to go into it. And
Yes. And another thing I love about the AG is our youth directors. When I came in and I started working here, I never talked to this dude in my life. Just got a random text. Hey, I'm Ryan Yates. I'm
Shout out.
I'm the DYD. Shout out, name drop. Let's go have lunch and talk.
we'll have the invoice to you soon, Ryan.
Yeah. And let's go out to lunch and talk. And that was something that meant something to me because coming from a non-AG background and just coming into this and him being like, hey, let's go fellowship, let's go talk, let's meet up somewhere and stuff like that. That meant a lot to me because coming into this, dude, my first fall convention, I remember standing in the back of the room looking at how many kids were in that room and all the pastors that were serving. And I was like, this is overwhelming because I came from a church. My wife hates this about me, but I came from a church where I knew everybody because I was there my whole life. I mean, the Walmart by the church, you walk in there, you see like 15 people you know. And my wife is like, everywhere we go, you see somebody you know. And I'm like, well, I've been here for 24 years.
Yeah, that happens.
And so, but now that we're here, it's like, it comes from knowing a lot of people to knowing nobody. And he made the transition very comfortable and very easy. And I remember when I first met Donnie must have been really busy because he didn't seem like he wanted to talk. But now Donnie's one of my really good friends, and we get to chatting every so often. And then you and I really didn't connect until probably about a year I was here because it was just so busy.
Yeah.
We were both like in that group. Obviously, I was in my first year here trying to get stuff done, and then I mean, like, we really didn't start connecting really until probably like, man, what was that?
I think it took a little while.
Yeah, it took a little while. It was probably, I don't remember, but I just remember it was like, at first I was like, man, I don't know if he really likes me. And then it was like, nah, he's a cool guy.
Well, yeah. Apparently, Donnie's first thought of me was like, yeah, like I don't know about this dude. I don't know if he likes me. He's really quiet, and then yeah, that's all.
That's just Tyler.
All
He's just quiet. But
Well,
then once you get to know Tyler,
There's
that he
there's
cares.
a lot of that, and I'm working on being more, outgoing, forthright, and the week because this past summer was the first year I served at our summer camp,
Same.
and it was super eye opening to me, in just being able to grow as a leader and all that kind of stuff, and
I enjoyed it.
I did too. I'm going back. I'm going back. My wife is coming with me, and then we got one student who's going to come with us this summer.
That
so
is
I'm
what it's
excited.
about.
Yeah, we're serving the first week.
I think we're going week 1, and then we're
Perfect.
going to serve week 2.
Oh, we're going week 3.
See, Tyler, you
Yeah.
just messed things up.
Sorry, that's my bad. It's the same. It's the same week that we went to camp last year and last 2 years, so it's just easy for parents and.
But for
everyone.
me, like, that's where I started in youth ministry. Like, I was like, what the church I was serving at, we called a service coordinator, is basically like an usher. And so, like, I just remember there was a group of 4 or 5 guys, and we just made service flow. We made things happen. We set up the games at camp and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so, going back and getting to do that again, it's like, this is what it's about.
Yeah, and a lot of it was, for me, like first and foremost, like students are a priority. So I'll never, and Ryan, you can dislike me because of this, but I'll never serve at something where my students are,
Yeah.
and because I'm bringing them there, so I want to be there for them.
Yeah.
Whether it's hanging out or whatnot, but But with summer camp, like there's 2 weeks that my students aren't going, and so always more than willing. And I've got one. We have one senior graduating, and so like I said, she's coming with us. And then I think I've already got 4 students who are like, hey, if you're who hit the age requirement the following summer in 2026, they're like, dude, if you're serving, we're coming.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited to be able to open up that opportunity. But it's a lot of fun. Yeah, I do love the fellowship that we are in, the AG and having the network. I look forward to network councils every year.
Oh, it's so much fun.
I look forward to those events. I'm looking forward to the Refresh Conference where we're going. In the end of this month, I'm going on. My lead pastor, Pastor Josh, is part of a cohort in this state, and so we're going with him next Monday somewhere. Des Moines, Ames, not 100% sure, but we're going to another, kind of round table with this cohort, and I loved it the first time, so I'm excited to do that again. But
That's awesome.
I love being able to connect with other ministry leaders and other pastors, build relationships, because they know. We kind of talked about it at the outset. They know what you're going through.
Yeah.
They know what you walk through. They know what it's like to bomb a message.
Yep.
They know what it's like to have a youth student or a congregant member come up to you right after you walked off the pulpit and drop something on you.
Yeah.
They know what it's like. And so you've got people, comrades, who are
I like that.
who are in it.
In the trenches.
They're in the trenches. They're in the thick of it. They know what's going on. They know what you walk through. You can tell them something that you could and they'll understand it immediately versus telling someone else who's not in ministry, and they'll be like, okay, that doesn't really seem like a big deal, or just do this, that, and it's like, yeah, but you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know.
I remember when I hit
They
my
do.
1 year working at the church, I remember I texted, one of the youth pastors texted me in a network and texted me out of nowhere and was like, hey, how's things going? And I was like, dude, if I'm going to be honest, like I hit like a year one slump, and I was like, this is not fun. And he was like, yeah, the year one slump he's like, it's not fun. But he's like, once you get on the other side of it, he's like, you'll never look back. And going to year 2, it's like, I was kind of nervous because I was like, I'm about to enter into year 2. I don't want to hit another one of those slumps. And then I went through it and I was like, sweet, let's go. Let's keep going. And so it was cool to have that little bit of encouragement and someone else had walked through that already and was there to help me. So how long has this been?
Almost an hour and a half.
Nice.
Dude, you were right. We can chat.
I said we could keep. Yeah, I mean, it's almost noon here, 11:42. We could probably go till 1, but I mean, we obviously all have.
Then my computer
You know-
would absolutely
Then
explode.
it would explode.
Let's just do for Speed the Light a 24-hour podcast.
Dude, you know what's funny? I could do that.
I think that would be fun.
I think. You would probably want to do. I think it would
A
probably
live
be
stream.
better. Yeah,
Yeah.
it'd be better as a live.
We should do that.
Hey,
I'll make
Dude,
a note.
I'm all for raising money for Speed the Light. We could also bring like some of our students and leaders on as guests throughout the.
That would be awesome.
Dude, okay, I think
I like it.
we got something. Ryan and
something
Megan, we're
cooking.
raising money for Speed the Light. Don't you worry. That's sweet. That's actually a sick idea, dude.
I never even thought that.
No.
You know where I got that from is because one of our leaders last year to raise money for his missions trip that we went on to Brazil, he did a 24-hour ping pong.
Yeah, I did hear. I heard
So
something.
maybe your thing is a 24-hour something every
Yeah,
day.
24
and
hours
so
something.
and the best
4-hour-long podcast.
the best part about
Well-
that is we don't have to sit at this table for 24 hours. We can go in the youth room, move around.
We
We
can
have
figure something else out.
Dude.
Well, but the issue is Pastor Ernst's gonna have to get a better computer for that
yeah. You're
Oh,
gonna
I've already got a plan.
because his would blow up
Let's-
3 times over if we did that.
let's do it.
I like it.
We're gonna plan this.
Dude,
I think
yeah.
Pastor Johnny would be part and support as well.
2025. We're doing a 24-hour podcast.
I think my
to raise
lead
money for-
pastor
25-hour. 2025.
Oh, 25 hours? I might fall asleep.
24, yes. 25, too much.
24 perfect. 25.
I like it. I like it.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Let's.
Well,
and then we can split our money we raise
for surezies.
Dude. Okay, I am excited. Let's do it. Let's figure that out. That'd be sweet.
We love you. Shalom. Thanks for listening, and be sure to follow Restoration Podcast on Spotify and Apple. If you're watching on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe.